Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities in Miniatures, and it's time for me to go on a bit of a ramble for today's Obscurity in Literature. And today I want to talk about Chinese comics, in particular the one you see in front of you here, Dragon Man by Khoo Fuk Lung, which is a bit of an interesting one for me because it just so happened to be one of these artists that I have been interested in for a long time. And it wasn't until very recently that I happened across these books at a typical nerd shop that just kind of carries a lot of various, I'm assuming, used goods. Kind of like, Book Off, Mandarake type, but just a lot of stuff in general. And the fact that I found these, I was like, oh crap, I remember this. So Khoo Fuk Lung is interesting for me because way back in the day, he was the artist that was behind Iron Marshal from Jade Man Comics. And yeah, this is the original issue #1. Good God. Look, nice and yellowed pages. And when I first came across this book, my mind was just blown away. 1990. I feel like it came out earlier, but at least that's the copyright date. I probably stumbled across these books roughly 91, 92-ish. I want to say I was probably still in junior high, but having subsisted on a steady diet of kung fu movies on Channel 5 locally every Saturday and Sunday. I don't know how many times I've saw movies with flying guillotines at one point or another, but that stuff left a major impact on me. And probably kind of set me down the road that I have followed for the last few decades in terms of preferences and styles of art and stuff that I've always enjoyed. I probably got into comics really seriously around the original time that Image Comics first came out. We did kind of get wrapped up in the big hoopla there. I think went to Comic-Con for the first time, I want to say either 91 or 92. And kind of from there, I'd always enjoyed comics in one form or another, but that was probably one of the major catalysts that really got me down that line of just kind of enjoying sequential art, comic book art, what have you. But the Hong Kong stuff in particular was something I hadn't ever really come across yet. So, yeah, I discovered manga, and manga was cool in that it was all black and white. I hadn't read a whole lot, especially in Japanese, at the point we're talking 91, 92. That's when Viz is still publishing a lot of stuff under their Studio Proteus days when they were part of Eclipse still. So, I had a familiarity with it, and it was published in a similar format, and in the days before having access to the internet, I didn't know what the hell I was really reading or anything. I know a lot of the other early Jade Man books have kind of a background thing. Some of those Jade Man books were thick. We're talking like 60 plus pages in the days of traditional old comic books. And for me to see something like this where you had hand-painted panels was something really wild. And the thing about Khoo Fuk Lung's art here is, of a lot of the manhwa Hong Kong artists, there really was a bit of a manga edge to it. Now, Tony Wong was the big head honcho behind Jade Man, was one of the big creators and movers and shakers in the Hong Kong comic scene. And he had his own style, and while his name ended up on a lot of the books that they published, whether he actually drew any of it or not, Khoo Fuk Lung really had a bit of an interesting style. Like, I don't know if it was himself or the teams that he worked with, but the books that he was involved with had a really, it grabbed my attention. I had a bunch of the, Tony Wong books. I had a lot of Jade Man books, period. And if you guys are really interested, we can dig some of those out one day and just kind of go through them. But the pacing, having been familiarized with manga by the time I came across these, but the fact that everything was in color, the fact that you had those crazy painted panels, pages, what have you, big gatefolds in the middle. Really kind of blew my mind. I hadn't seen anything like that, and there definitely wasn't anything like this in the American comic scene. You know, I was just like, whoa. You know, and there is a bit of an anime, manga-esque edge to it, and especially with, like, some of the more cutesy pictures. You know, many of the artists in the scene would have the typical SD styles to them. And we'll get there. So as I was taking a look at these and digging through my collection, funny thing enough, for a long time, Khoo Fuk Lung, one of the big ones that when Image started to push a lot of the Chinese stuff, Tony Wong and Jade Man made a bit of a resurgence in the mid-90s. One of the artists involved with that was Khoo Fuk Lung in his Solar Lord book, which was actually drawn originally by Tony Wong in the 70s, and then he brought it back in a much more updated form, which he did, I believe, after this book. I could be wrong. It was before or after. I can't remember exactly. And funny enough, I was there for those books as well. Mega Dragon and Tiger, #1 here, prominently displayed, Tony Wong. And again, by this time, we are starting to see a lot of the computer colors coming forth in the comics themselves. But again, you have all those crazy hand-painted panels and wild, garish colored kung fu fights. Man, I was always there for the painted art. And this is around the time of, like, you know, we're really digging artists like Bisley and a lot of the 2000 AD fully painted stuff. In the, you know, after Slaying the Horned God had come out, there was just a lot of cool stuff. And, like, these panels in particular, this dude in the back, always reminded me of somebody from Solar Lord, that Khoo Fuk Lung style art. You can see Solar Lord right there. And I immediately, this was the first of the Image books that I wanted to pick up. I found the artwork in the Khoo Fuk Lung stuff a lot more exciting in the Total Wings of Onimai's ripoff. 1999, wow. Anyway, as I was digging that out, I found a random Chinese book that I had picked up at a book off. I don't know what the conversion is. Not sure. Just based on the cover makes me think it's a bit more of a traditional retelling of, like, a traditional kung fu novel, you know, the Jin Yong stuff. I can think of the other dude's name. I've read a couple of his books, but again, this is the book that I immediately think of when I think of Khoo Fuk Lung's artwork, and that is his Saint book. And yeah, I paid a whole $1 for this. This is one that I really, really, really wished we saw come out in English, and I think it would have been a really cool retelling of the Monkey King, and the artwork is stellar, and there's just tons and tons of monsters and craziness in that book. Again, we've got those crazy nice painted panels everywhere. Colors aren't anything really to write home about. I mean, they're not bad. This is obviously in the days before pure digital artwork. Funny enough, somewhere I do own. So the Image books there that we just showed didn't really go anywhere. And then we see in the early 2000s, Comics One started trying to publish more Chinese books. And once more, we see some of the Jade Man stuff along with Storm Riders, which was a really, really beautiful book and needs to be given the proper care and attention here in the States that it needs. But that's a whole different story we can talk about another time. So anyway, finally getting to the book here. I found it interesting again that this is like the early 90s style color jobs that you see in a lot of the Hong Kong books. But I love the tokusatsu style that he's got going on. I don't know a whole lot about the Hong Kong comic scene outside of, you know, just books and things that I've found online. But one of the things I've always liked is a lot of the books that have Khoo Fuk Lung's kind of background artwork. And the dude has some serious style. Very dark edge to a lot of his work. And it's funny how it's just such a Batman pastiche here. Shoving grenades in your mouth. It's interesting though, it's almost like non-colored at times. You can see there's definitely an eye for the detail, whereas a lot of these books, the focus is on the intricate kung fu maneuvers and crazy lines flying off of the characters. But the pacing, I feel like with Khoo Fuk Lung's art, always had a bit more of that manga style to it. Much more so than a lot of his counterparts. I mean, just the look of some of the panels themselves. That's right, this is the book with the big Cyber Buddha. Of course, every time I see Cyber Buddhas, I immediately think of Ashura's Wrath, but that's a whole different story. Or Gantz. Again, that sense of speed, the sense of pacing. It's something that I feel is kind of lacking in today's comics. Or at least, it's something we don't see often enough, I should say. Again, like the crazy random painted panels. I mean, I've kind of pieced together the story as much as I could. This is Dragon Man 2, though. Or maybe that's what's coming next. This is 1992? Really? See, here's what I'm talking about. Look at like just the little cutesy SD style art. It's totally influenced by the Japanese stuff. And not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but it's really cool to see them kind of take it on its own and work their own style into it. Always Khoo Fuk Lung has to have a cigarette hanging out of his mouth whenever he draws himself in these little biographical pieces. The dude's definitely got talent. So I actually managed to find 5 of these. Whether there's more or not is anybody's guess. And if you have any information or ideas on where to track this stuff down nowadays, I'm all ears. I mean, I feel like this is kind of just... I don't think this really exists anymore. Obviously, with China and Hong Kong being a bit of a hot-button issue between the two of them, I feel like the style didn't really catch on as much in the mainland. Because a lot of the, then again, these days everything seems to be more digital style. I don't know. If there are any of you guys out there that have any leads on where to find this stuff, I mean, I am all ears. I really am. I was a big fan of just about everything that we saw Comics One publish when they were bringing their graphic novels to the US. Sometimes I feel I was the only one that was buying those graphic novels when they came to the US. That's full-on Terminator. Somewhere out there are actual art books drawn by said artist. Garage Kits 92. Wow, these really are dated. And it's always kind of fun looking at all the old stuff. Shadow Moon, that must be like Kamen Rider Black era. I feel like I've rambled for a bit now, so I'm going to try to wrap things up here. But just again, these are neat. You don't see a lot of stuff like this. And not only that, but at the time that these were published, you really didn't see a whole lot of sci-fi or fantasy. Well, I would say more Western fantasy style artwork in Chinese comics. It was there. And, there was always a bit of a sci-fi bend to some of this. The more Asian and Chinese fantasy stuff has definitely been a thing. But it's interesting to see such a mix. The tokusatsu elements. There's some technology pieces going on here. The intricate kung fu battles that you always see prevalent in Hong Kong comic books. I have no idea what's going on back there. It's like Keita Amamiya style monsters or something. It's interesting as we go through, some of the pages start to have better and in more depth coloring, and then we go to kind of the sparseness again. I want to say at one point they actually did a Solar Lord and Dragon Man meetup type thing. Of course, at times flipping through this makes me think of who's the bad guy at the beginning of the original Final Fantasy game. It's just totally blanking on me at the moment. Like, more design works, more. There's definitely some interesting stuff. I like the face. The face of the head definitely has to be a bit of an Amamiya influence. Zeram probably came out around this time. Tony Wong, the Iron Marshal there. I have no idea what books those are, but it looks interesting. Super Cop 2. I like how it looks like Leon from Resident Evil. At one point, I do believe it was Khoo Fuk Lung that actually did a Batman Chinese-style graphic novel in the early 2000s. If you want to find something really weird and different. I don't know if I have my copy anymore. But just a nugget of art from a different time and place. Like I said, you know any more about it? I am absolutely interested to hear from you guys in that regard of where I can get more. Those are kind of cool. Like, I'm just rambling to myself here, but very interesting. All right, that's enough rambling for today. I'll let you folks go. If, like I said, if you got any more, if you want to see any more of that kind of stuff, I know I have more banging around here somewhere. So, yeah. With that said, then, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.